Welcome to the latest edition of Leadership Actually.
Yeah.
It's not love,
No.
it's leadership. And this is the messy class to make it that little bit easier for leaders.
Yeah.
Welcome, Lisa Powney.
Welcome, Lee Rogers. How the devil are you? Because I always say that, don't I?
You do. I'd miss it if you didn't
You
ask me
would,
that, actually. And as a Red Devil supporter myself, you know,
That's it.
I love it. Really, really good.
Yeah.
And I say that often, but
do.
this week has been mega.
Why?
Well, my daughter, let me just, a bit emotional, really. So my daughter did her first performance, like live performance yesterday, and it was in front of 130 people, which doesn't sound a lot to many people, but she did her first solo singing, and then she acted, and she danced, and I cried all the way through her solo.
Oh.
It was the proudest moment, and any parent listening to this, like I've always been, if I've done something, but it was a whole different level.
No.
So I was dead chuffed.
Well done, Ella. What was she singing?
Matilda. A little bit naughty. I don't know if that's the exact title.
It is.
But she had proper sass and like her arms. It was just. But what was amazing was, so they had this fire alarm before it all started. Like, and everyone was like, "Oh no!" And they even put like Christmas music over because someone was having a shower. And it was too hot, and so all these kids are like frantic, and they had to deal with all that. And then they went on and all performed, and you were like, fair play to you. If that's the first time you've ever done that, she properly inspired me.
Oh, I love that. And I resonate with that because I think I wrote on LinkedIn actually. Freddie had the same. Our kids have their kind of similar stuff, didn't they? And he had his first solo. His was a bit out in the street though, so they were singing. And he'd gone to his class and he said, "Can I do a solo?" And they didn't know he could sing really, so he did this little. And he always wants to be the greatest showman. That's what he's going to be in his life. So he wanted to sing A Million Dreams. So. Yeah, he did that. But just before it was his thing, he disappeared from the crowd where everyone was singing. And you could tell he was having a massive wobble. And as his mum, I was like, I can't look. He's having a massive wobble. But he took a big breath and off he came. And he just did a really good show. And I think they really inspire us, don't they? When we're doing the messy moments, they kind of had the resilience, both of them, to be able to do that. So we can take a lot from our kids, as we often do in the leadership lessons. Definitely.
Absolutely, and it definitely transfers to leadership. I just think as adults we get too serious sometimes.
We do, totally do.
Okay, do you want to introduce this week's epic guest?
I do.
I say excited, but this person warms my heart. So over to you.
I will. I'm going to give you the official, so I like to read it, if that's all right. So welcome, first of all, Amanda Chadwick. How are you?
I'm fine, and thank you for having me.
Good, you're very welcome. It's a bit of a wet and miserable day out there, so it's nice to have the sunshine in the room, I hope.
No, I don't mind. I love bad weather. It's not bad weather. I love, unruly weather. Because you've called it bad, it is bad weather, isn't it? But I love it. I love the storms and everything, so...
Oh, well, that's a perfect day for you today. Because there's loads of that going on. So, Amanda, I'm going to introduce you. So, someone who spent her life speaking to and for people, whether that's as a broadcaster, a trainer, or a public speaker. You have the gift of making people feel seen and heard and informed. And I've seen it for myself, and so has Lee. So, we absolutely champion that. So, from HR to health and well-being and women's voices in business, you bring insight, humour and deep humanity, which we hope is part of this podcast too today. You're someone who's lived a big, full life, and you bring that human side to the way that you lead and support others. So, but before we dive into leadership and the messy question, what's the one thing you wished people asked about you which isn't really on your bio or in your job description?
What I like apart from work? What things do I like? Because I think everybody talks to me about employment law and health and safety, and sometimes I'm there for the fashion. I'm there for the makeup, I'm there for the chats, and I love chatting about people. So that's my favourite bits really. And I think I also think that it's nice if people ask you about your background. And your family, because they're the world to me, family. And I wouldn't be where I was today if it wasn't for family. I think that's really important.
Brilliant. And we're going to get a bit more of that insight as we move forward. But we say it's the messy class. So we always like to start with a bit of a messy question.
Yeah.
And then we'll dive into learning a bit more about you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I want you to think about like real human moments. So can you think of a time when something that caught you off guard that you weren't really expecting, and what did you learn from it?
Right, so actually I was having this conversation with my husband the other day, because he said, what do you want in life? And I thought, actually, what do I? You know, and I thought about that, and it reminded me, it took me back to when I was a first sort of thought I need to push myself, and I take it back a good few decades, and I worked in this office with this lady who wasn't a very nice lady, to be fair.
Yeah.
She was quite snotty and full of herself. And I remember she said to me, she just got a promotion, and I was quite happy as I was. And she said to me, look at you. She says, look at you at your age. And I was under 30, by the way. She said, I'm senior manager now, and I'm only like early 20s. And look at you, what, you're nearly 30? She said, and what have you done? And I thought, oh my God.
Yeah.
I thought, I'm actually really happy. So what I did at that moment, there was a job going. And I thought, do you know what, I'm not having that. So I thought, it's about time you kicked yourself up the bum. And that's what she did for me. And I walked over to who was the director at the time and just said, look, you've got a job going, and I think I'll be really good at it. And I want to have that job, if that's okay. And if you don't believe in me, you can put me on a secondment, I'll prove myself.
Wow.
But I want to do that job. And then I sat back down, and the director said, yeah, you can have it, you can do it, you know. And it was more money, it was much more challenges. And you know, I was really chuffed when I saw her face that I'd got that job, which was actually better than the job that she'd had. So, you know,
Yes.
And that really challenged me. And I think that that took me off guard, because I was actually happy doing what I was doing.
Yes.
And she just gave me this kick up the bum. There's lots of things that have taken me off guard, and you know, but I'd never expected, you know, behaviours or things that have happened.
Brilliant. That is a really brilliant message, you know, that it kicked you up the bum and moved you
did,
forward.
yeah.
So I gave you a bit of an introduction, but it'd be really good to understand a little bit more about how you got to where you got to today, I guess, and a bit of your plotted history. And we've had a little bit of it in that messy moment, but tell us a bit more.
It's very checkered, it's very colourful, it's very long, but this was not the career that I wanted. So I wanted to be an actress, and I'd planned that. So my dad was a Royal Marine, was in the Royal Marines for 22 years.
Yeah.
Mum and dad were born and bred in Ancoats, very working class, and they we travelled all over with my mum and dad, everywhere. And unfortunately had a lovely upbringing, and a hard upbringing, not much money in the pockets, but you know, opportunities because you're in the services. So I would do dance and drama, and I that was it. I was being an actress, you know. Yeah. And actually, one of my posts on LinkedIn, you'll see a photograph I've sent off to Coronation Street to try and get a job with them, and they put, and it was my smooth pass photo. If you see it, it's awful. And they sent me a lovely letter back saying, sorry, you know, you need an Asian, basically. And I just wanted to be an actress, and what happened was my life was mapped out. I thought, I'm going to do costume design, so I did sewing. So if it didn't work out as an actress, I knew I'd have money coming in. And so I left school and I started college. And it was the times when, you know, your family, you have to have a grant, you have to have like money to go to uni. And I phoned my mum and said, I'm getting the like 4 o'clock bus. She went, oh, love, we've got something to tell you. So I said, what? She goes, because me and your dad work. She said, you won't get a grant for uni, so there's no point carrying on, because you won't get a grant, and we can't afford to send you to university because there's 6 other children behind you, you know, so we're not going to be able to do that. So I said, oh, right, okay then. I said, not a worry, Mum. I said, Julia, my mate's doing a YTS up the road. I'd go knock on the door and see if they, you know, they've got this YTS. Yeah. And I knocked on the door, and at this Sight and Sound college, it was actually in Manchester Town Centre. And I got put on a 6-week placement, and they trained me, and it was brilliant. And I never saw the bad side. I just thought, this is a fantastic opportunity. And they put me in this company called Hertz, and right near Manchester Airport. And that was the biggest gift anybody's ever given to me, because they treated me really well. They welcomed me. I had this lady they were very, very pompous, by the way. But they were very Cheshire, pompousy, and looking at postcodes and car regs and everything. But I loved it. I loved it, honestly. They looked after me. Within 6 weeks, I proved myself. my mum said, work hard. And I did. And they took me on at 16 years of age, and he's 17. I was flying around the UK on a BA flight, and they used to give you bucks fizz as you got on the flight. Training people. Like, honestly, that's what I started.
What a great job.
Yeah, training. So that's how I started. And then that was such a fantastic opportunity for me. And because I was surrounded with people that looked after themselves, that were older, that mentored me, I had a really old head. And that's when I got into speaking and training, and at a very young age, really. And I was really, really lucky. Yeah, so that's how I started.
Amazing.
You know, one thing I love about that, though, and we've heard it a few times on this podcast, is you said they gave you an opportunity,
Yeah.
but what you also said is, well, you went and knocked on the door.
Yeah.
You know, and I wonder how many people listening to this or
Yeah.
watching this would be encouraged to go and knock on the door, or the virtual door, right? Because it springs to my mind that you created that opportunity or that opening in the first place to then be able to go and walk through the door.
Yeah. I think you create, you know, you can't sit there and expect things to come to you. You can't do that. And I think so many people do. We didn't have much money. So if I wanted nice things, I'd have to work. So I think when you've heard me talk before, I talk about the fact that I babysat from the age of 10, you know, to just be able to buy a comic and some sweets. You know, then working in a butchery, then working on a market, and then getting up in my mum's size 7 moon boots because it's blooming freezing on a handbag store, you know, and getting that money and buying loads of plastic earrings in the 80s and, you know, stuff like that, you know, and that, you know, I knew that if you wanted to do something, you had to work. You can't expect things to be given to you. And you've got to knock on those doors, like you say, and seek that opportunity, because it won't come to you. You're very lucky if it does. And you have to go and find it yourself, I think.
It resonates so much.
Yeah.
Working hard, working class background, work ethic, create some of your own opportunities, but work on them and apply yourself when you get them.
Yeah.
Ultimately, is what I hear.
Yeah.
Amazing. So what from that then? You know, we talked about chartering your career. What after then the YTS? What came next?
Right. So what happened then is, because the lady I was working with, she went off with stress. So I basically fell into her shoes, and they sent me at a very young age to live and work in Swindon in Wiltshire.
Yeah.
But there was a traumatic thing that happened at that point. I had a boyfriend. I was only 17. I was coming up to my 18th birthday, and we just went to, I just had this opportunity. They said, when you're 18, we want to send you again on secondment, with the hope of staying there permanently and working inside one of our clients' businesses, doing, you know, helping them, etc., with car hire basically, and training, etc. So I was like, brilliant. So my boyfriend rang me, and I said, I'll meet you at 7:30 tonight in the local pub, and he said, yeah. And I went to meet him, and we were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. My boyfriend got shot in front of me when I was 17 years of age. Wow. And at that point, I had to go, I couldn't wait to basically leave. 2 known gangsters, wrong place, wrong time. And that was a turning point in my life, because I went to Swindon. Yeah. And I worked in Swindon, and I couldn't wait till I was 18. I came back to go to Crown Court, put 2 people in prison one in prison for a very long time, and it obviously affects you. Yeah. And I just lost like the thrill of doing the job I did. I wanted to start afresh, because there was no police protection in those days. And I thought, do you know what? I used to walk, when I worked at that college, when it's Sight and Sound College, I used to go past a casino, and I thought, do you know what? I think I want to be a croupier, because I can just travel the world. Yeah. And I want to go, and I know, you know, Joan Collins, like, I've been brought up on Joan Collins' Dynasty in Dallas, and it was just glamour, and I thought, I want to do that. I just want to do that. So I'd had enough. I think I needed to end that journey. I worked in Swindon. I was bullied by a woman when I was down there, and I just wanted to come home. So I came home, and I just said I went for 3 interviews at the casino. The guy just said, you're on too much money. It's not good money, you know. I said, I want to travel. He goes, think of another way of doing it. I said, no, I want a job as a croupier. And he was called Dave, by the way, the manager. I was knocking on every time they said there's a training school. And eventually I got in, and I gave at work where I was working, and I gave in Fresh Start. And it was just brilliant. I loved it. And that was like my next step. I never travelled the world, by the way, because I got pregnant. I got pregnant, and that's my eldest daughter. And that just changed everything. So, you know, your whole life changes then. It wasn't like it is now, where when you have a child, there was no support, there was not many nurseries or anything. It's really difficult, so I couldn't do that job then. So I went back to doing what I knew, which was training and speaking and stuff. So
something massive happened at a really young age. And you can see your natural drive, we talked about it, like from the moment you speak, there is that drive to get out there and do something. How did it impact you, and how did you get back onto having that drive? Right, next thing I want to do is be a croupier.
Well, I'll be dead straight that there was a period in my life where I made loads of mistakes, like really big, huge mistakes based on the fact that I never confronted what had happened to me. I just accepted it and then never really thought about the consequences of going to a Crown Court while two men are staring at you and they're giving evidence. And I think that when I went to Swindon, and I worked with a fantastic opportunity, house paid for, travel home every weekend, but I worked with a woman that was incredibly jealous of my situation, and yet she hadn't walked in my shoes and known how sore my feet were through walking in them. She'd just seen me with a smile on my face and a great opportunity, and made my life absolute hell. So I couldn't wait to go home. And I think that I'll be honest with you, mental health, then I phoned Mum up and I said, look, I need to come home, Mum. And she went, right, I'll send your dad to get you. We'll let work know. I let work know. My dad drove. Honestly, my dad didn't give lifts. So, so it was a big deal for him to drive to get me. I couldn't drive, he didn't give lifts. And by the way, my dad's called Frank Gallagher. So my brother's called Frank Gallagher as well. And it's like a family name, honestly. And he drove and he picked me up. And at the minute I saw him, I just burst out crying. And I talk about this because these tears weren't tears where you just can go. These were like blobs of absolute emotion, and I couldn't stop them. So when he drove me home, I cried all the way home. I was looking out the window going, and I could not stop.
Wow.
And then I got home, and my mum came to the bedroom in the evening, and she knocked on the door and she said, listen, love, she said, Dad said, you've been crying for hours. He said, and we're worried about you. We might have to ring the doctor if you don't pull yourself together. Yeah. And I'm not being funny, she said, they'll section you. So I was like, what? Because that was the interpretation of mental health then. Yeah, and I just read a novel by Frances Farmer, who is like a 1920s actress, and she'd gone through sort of like being sectioned by her own dad and everything. And I just thought, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? So I pulled myself together, and then I just bottled it up. Yeah. But then what happened is further down the line, I had access to an employee assistance program and had counselling. And that was when my life changed. That was when that lady said something to me. Yeah. And I had the courage to change my life like that, because I thought, what are you doing? Do you remember the old Mandy? Do you remember her? And I'd made terrible decisions. I'd made, and I hold my hands up and admit it. Yeah. Things I wouldn't have done, choices I wouldn't have made. And she doesn't realise really what she did to me, but she really gave me that kick that then made me make better decisions in my life, and that was my future, and that's what changed. And I think that was the turning point. But the counselling was amazing.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Actually, lots of people will resonate with that around bottling it up and struggling with some of those things. And I think that's what makes you really authentic and human, is you're willing to go, but I made lots of mistakes and I didn't get it right. Yeah. But when I took the time to look at myself and kind of look inside, and that's when things change. So how did they change? So you got that kick and you wanted to do something different. How did you then find your voice, because you became a speaker, not just a trainer, but you became more in that world.
So what happened there was when she'd said that to me, and by the way, there's a massive chunk I'm missing out for you here. There's a massive chunk. Okay. And I'd made the wrong decision. I got married to really not a very nice person, which which I probably won't go into great detail about, because I had a horrific marriage, and it was not a nice marriage, and I was stuck in a rut. I was in this awful marriage. I didn't have a mobile phone. No. I wasn't allowed to drive. I was picked up and dropped off. It was very controlling. And when she said that to me, I thought, what? Somebody I looked after, this old man I looked after, a family friend, had passed away as well. Yeah. And I'd gone for counselling, and the first counselling session, the lady said, my ex-husband turned up and sat next to me for the counselling session. Wow. And she said, sorry, why are you sat here? And he goes, I've come to listen to what she's got to say. She goes, the counselling session's not for you, it's for her.
Yeah.
And she said, you need to go. And he goes, no, I want to listen. She goes, oh, I can't do the counselling session if you're here. So he went.
Yes.
And I sat there, and she goes, I think you need to tell me everything, don't you? And I opened up about everything. And that's where I got the courage. So then that comment happened. Then I just thought, I've had enough. And she warned me I would eventually just turn around and go, I'm not taking this anymore.
Yeah.
She said, you need to be able to pick up the pieces. And I thought, I'm not taking this anymore. And I just turned around and said, I don't want to be with you. And I can't tell you what a big decision that was, because I'd been threatened so much.
Yeah.
And they told me, so I'd taken this secondment. And they said to me, look, you can't get buses. You can't be dropped off. You need to learn to drive. So that was really good, because that gave me an excuse to learn to drive.
Yeah.
And then they said, you also need a mobile. You have to have a mobile. They didn't just come out then. I was like, I've got a mobile. So I was getting this independence I'd never had. And I'm being controlled. And then what happened was, I'd come home, I was late, and my ex-husband came in, and he threw like a huge bag at my head, and I snapped. And I thought, I'm not having this. And I said, I don't want to be with you. I do not want to be with you. I don't love you. I don't want to be with you. And that was when my life changed. I'd made that decision. I freed myself. I'd learnt to drive. I had a mobile phone. I got that freedom. I'd got this new job. And then what happened, I had this newfound confidence. And I used to work with all the television channels. And they came, and there was a guy from Sky who was quite high up in Sky. He came up, and I had to do this presentation for this incentive. And he came in, and he just said, you're such a good presenter. He said, you're not a trainer. You're such a good presenter. You're not thought about presenting. And I just went, no. And I didn't take him seriously, but I took the compliment.
Yeah.
And I realised that people listened to me when I spoke. And that's when I thought, actually, do you know what? There's something here. And I'd already got into the employment law side of it, because of the incentive schemes and motivation. And that was my, that job I went for was all about that: motivation, incentives, program implementation, presenting, training. It was all of that. And it was working with all the television channels. And that was when my life changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much.
So there's a lot of that. I told you there's loads.
If I didn't love you before,
Yeah.
I love you even more tenfold now.
Oh.
There is a million reasons why, and what you've just shared, for like so many people listening to this, there'll be lots of people that resonate, and we will put links to support services for if anybody is triggered by it. Your courage and who you are and how you show up, there's something about you. I know ultimately why we connected.
Yeah.
Genuinely. And what I love now, having gone through what you've gone through, you shine a light, an energy that people love. So not only are you a brilliant presenter, you take people with you, your energy lights up the room. And what I love about what you've just talked about is you use all of that. You talk about your family, which I absolutely adore. I don't adore your family. I love the fact you talk about your family. I love the fact that you have used all your experiences ultimately to help other people and have an impact on a huge amount of people. How does that register with you?
It makes me feel good knowing that, and it's only over the past couple of years I've told my story, because I've kept it, inside. And I would like to point out that my ex-husband had his own demons. He didn't have a great, and I accept. I don't hold a grudge, and I forgive. That's the way you move forward, because if you do, you'd be a very bitter person in life. And whether we like it or not, that was part of my journey. That was part of who I am today, and that person is part of my journey. But my journey is so much better now. But I do share that story, because when everybody started talking about mental health, I thought, well, I've been there. I've been there a couple of times. I've got 4 children, 3 of which I've given birth to. I've had 11 pregnancies, so obviously I've had loss there. I've had disability where I've lost my hearing. I've had lots of things happen, and I think that I could share that to help people, because and that's what comes from my LinkedIn, by the way. Those people message me and go, I heard you said this, could you help me? Or I've been in debt. I've been in debt. When I left that relationship, I went bankrupt, And that woman, by the way, the woman that I'm on about, she's never seen me since, but my sister-in-law worked with her, and she goes, oh, how's she doing? I heard she went bankrupt.
Wow.
You know, if that's the only thing you can hold on to, get a life, you know. Let's drop that taboo and stigma where somebody is so skint because of circumstances that they have to go bankrupt, which is what I did. But, you know, I've been right on my bum, and I've never thought it's anybody else's fault, and I've never blamed anybody else. I've just thought, you know what, you get yourself up and get going, because that's what a leader is. That's who an influencer is. It's somebody that people can look up to and think, that's what I want to do. I want to be like that. I can get through it when they're in the bad times of their life, I think.
And, you know, it's so powerful that you're using your voice for good. Like, you know, you're taking all of those things that happened and you've processed and moved them forward and now using them for good. And you can see that determination in there to make a difference. I think we talk a lot about our leaders out there. And I think the top thing that, you know, people are saying is, how do I become more human and authentic and share a bit of my learning or my story at work? How can I do that in a safe way? So for people that are listening as leaders, do you have any thoughts or tips on how they can, you know, show up at work in a more authentic place? And what might that mean for them?
I think it's about, I've watched a lot of people on LinkedIn and social media, and I think you can tell when it's fake. You know, when people go, oh, like I talk about the menopause because I'm 57 and I've been through that, and endometriosis, obviously with the loss of children and everything, and I talk about it authentically and say, you know, I actually went through it, I know what it means. I can tell when somebody's just jumping on the bandwagon and making a bit of money from it. And I think that if you're going to be authentic and you want to be heard, you've got to talk about something that you know a lot about and bring your natural essence to the conversation. And if you make it up, or you're just reading, you're not going to get very far, and people will soon find you out. You'll run out of things to say. So, and I think if you want people to get on with you, if you want to be a leader and you want to inspire people, you have to dig down into yourself and find your authentic self and talk about your journey and things that will help people, I believe.
Absolutely. And if you wanted to do, you know, as a leader, you want to do a bit more of that work and dig down into yourself, where might we start? What could we do to really uncover ourselves and be more authentic, do you think?
Do you know what? I think talk about your first job.
Nice.
Yes. Excuse me. I talk about your first job because that show, you know, what was your first job?
I worked in Threshers.
Oh,
and
did you?
I also, at the same time, I was a waitress. And I also packed some tins because I was starting at uni and I wanted to do loads of jobs. So,
And what was your first job?
I was a greeter at Asda. I loved it. I got to talk to everyone, and I even dressed up as Warrington Wolves mascot one time.
Did you?
Wolfie. And I was buzzing about it. I did make a mistake though. So I knew one of my mates' mums walked past me, and I was like, oh, hi, Mrs. Winfield. And I forgot I was dressed as Wolfie.
Oh, no.
So she went in store and complained.
Did she?
Yeah. So sorry, Mrs. Winfield, all these years later. But it made me go, oh, yeah, Matt said as a cat. But I loved it because, you know, and I just got to chat to people and got paid. Like, what's not to love?
But they see how nice that is. So one of my first jobs when I was 16, the first proper one was sticking labels on Mr. Kipling's real milk chocolate meals, you know, and I think that's the way. You just break the ice. What have you had for tea? What was your first job? Finding out somebody's, you know, what the background is, I think is really, really important. And if I was interviewing anybody, that's what I'd ask them.
Yeah, that's nice.
What's your first job? Where have you come from, basically? How hard have you worked? And, you know, just I'm interested in that.
Get curious, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and I think we get so busy, don't we, though, when we're all into task and work and day-to-day stuff. We never, you know, put the time aside sometimes to go, right, we'll ask those questions, you know, and find out about each other and who are we as a team. And I think it's really important. And then you can start to discover yourself, as you said, which is, you know, massive, isn't it?
Well, that's how you find common ground, I think, to work with people as well and build up a brilliant team, is finding out, you know, people don't talk about the first job, but finding out, and then somebody else says, well, I used to be the greeter at Tesco, you know, and you find out at Threshers that was an off licence.
It was,
like,
it
they
was.
don't exist
and I
anymore,
learned all
do they?
about wine before I could drink it. So
So I think it's brilliant that. I think that's how you find and you build that common ground. And you find out about people and you find that and you can bond with each other.
Yeah. Why is common ground so important? do you think, as
I
a
think
leadership
for collaboration,
skill?
I think I'll always find common ground with everybody, and I think it's for collaboration and moving forward and building things together.
That's a really good tip.
Yeah, especially in the world, you know, we're talking about social media and LinkedIn, for example. Connection is critical, isn't it? You know, it feels like we've got all these devices to be more and more connected, but we've probably been least connected than we've ever been.
Yeah,
is my view.
that's
anyway.
it. More lonely.
Yeah.
We're more lonely than we've ever been.
Yeah.
Like I used to, I don't know if like I used to go into a shop when I was younger, and I'd go and get a pair, like if I saw a pair of trousers, I'd get them.
Yeah.
And then I'd just get the size I thought it was, and then if I didn't fit, I'd just go get the next size. Never bothered about what I weighed. I never bothered about what I looked like. I know I liked makeup and plastic earrings, and it was the 80s and stuff like that, but I never worried about that. And now we've got so much pressure, but we're connected in so many ways, but just so lonely. And I can't answer why, just that we are, aren't we?
Yeah. I don't know, even working from home at times. Like, I love coming in the studio to do this because you get to meet so many wonderful people and speak to brilliant, and to recognise the difference as well as the similarities. You know, that's always quite rewarding for me.
Yeah, I think you're right, as a nation we are, but I hear it a lot as leaders. You know, I sometimes, as you do, put out posts and talk about, you know, it's lonely in this space, and I can't tell you how many people message and go, I really feel that way. You know, and I've got nobody to talk to about, you know, these work challenges or life challenges. And the further you go up, you know, through that journey, the less people that you've got to talk to. And so, you know, we want to bring some of that community back, because it's really important, isn't it? If you feel lonely out there, then things always feel bigger and more problematic and more complex, don't they?
Festers, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I think you overthink. I know a lot of people that do overthink, and just focus on that thing, and it gets bigger and bigger, the problem, and it just, 12 months time it's actually not a problem. You look back and think, it wasn't really a problem, that, you know.
No, definitely not.
So one question I've got for you, and it's definitely not scripted, but so many people I come across like really struggle with HR, employment relations and stuff, and you talk about it so brilliantly, so eloquently. How do you help people almost overcome the fear of some of the issues that crop up in employment relations?
I think that employment law is complicated. It's so much red tape, it's complicated, and if you're running a business or running a company, or you're in HR, you're so busy with your everyday job that you have to keep up to date. But it's very hard, especially if you're part of the business. That's very, very difficult. So what I try to do is I can speed read, so I can I do predictive sentence reading. I don't know if you know about that, but I just do it naturally. So I can read and digest, and then I can interpret it and put it in layperson's terms. So it's a technique that I've got, and I do it. So that's the way that I train people, and then how I make people remember it is a storytell. So I'll connect a story to it, or something that's happened to somebody, and help people learn from their mistakes. So rather than reading, you know, reams and reams of paperwork and legislation, they can just listen to me and they can get it in a nutshell. So they learn that legislation in a second, you know, in a few minutes, from listening to me on a webinar, or just talking about an example, and say, this is what somebody did, this is the law, and don't do it. And then you know, it stays. And they'll go, I remember that story, and then it resonates, doesn't it? People remember. That's just how I naturally learn, and I think that's how I try and help people in HR or running a business to learn about the legislation, because it's so complicated.
Yeah, totally. And so is that how you balance empathy with expertise, you know, and bringing the human side to some of that employment law by bringing it to life through a story? Yeah,
and it makes me really sad, because there's a lot of tribunals, huge backlog in tribunals at the moment, and it's going to get bigger, especially with the employment rights bill. And what I find with the employment law side of it is that when it comes to the tribunals, I forgot, I was going to say that actually, but what was the question again?
I said when you're balancing empathy and expertise, is storytelling like a key skill in that space?
And that's what I was going to say actually, is that when I read out the tribunals, and there's big companies, household names, and I think that their managers have made that mistake, and I reckon they've been too busy, and I feel tight reading out those company names, because I know that they didn't mean to make that mistake. They just been swept up in businesses, but I have to tell their story to help other people learn from it.
Yeah.
And that's where the empathy comes in. But I don't take pleasure from a company's downfall or a person's downfall or them having a tribunal. I'm just educating people to learn from other people's mistakes.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And I guess a lot of our people are look after the people strategy, and they'll ask quite a lot of times, like, how do I communicate some of these big changes, or some employment law or processes in a way that my teams or the people will understand? So we've said storytelling is one of the ways. Are there anything else that we could take from what you've learned to help them put some of this
I'd
into
say watch
play?
my webinars.
Yeah.
So the webinars that I do, go on the LinkedIn, go on CIPD HR Info, watch those webinars as a back catalogue as well.
Brilliant.
Keep up to date. But also, so I think for those people, those leaders, it's hard to keep up to date now.
Really
So you
is.
do need to listen to things to have it put over quickly for you and easily. And then, but you need to train your managers, because at the moment with the Employment Rights Bill, if you're not training your managers, you're going to end up, in the street you don't want to be. It's going to cost you a fortune. You're going to have to train them and invest in your managers and staff that your employees listen to 100%.
Brilliant. Amazing.
And I would definitely authentically say that I've been on some of those webinars, and they are brilliant. They help you out. There's resources. They are genuinely fantastic. How do people do that? Sorry, just for simplicity, to follow the HR Inform, I think you said.
Yeah, so they can go on, CIPD HR Inform, Amanda Chadwick on LinkedIn, so and I'm on Instagram as well, but you can just connect and then you can get updated on the webinars and get on them. We can get up to 20,000 on a webinar, but that's not including replays as well.
Yeah.
And that's especially the Employment Rights Bill, but I'm doing one which is an HR planner in January, which I think lots of people will be interested in, which is looking at what to look out for the year. And I know that the feedback on that and people saying we need that, I know it's going to influence the way they are in the businesses and what to look out for and plan for the year and be prepared for all the changes as well.
And what's your mission with those, Amanda? What do you hope people get from them, and where do you want to take it?
I think for me, it's picturing myself in their shoes and knowing that I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been there with those kids. I've been there with children. I've been there trying to hold it together. I've been there going to, picking the children up from after school club, trying to get home, and then trying to, wonder what you're having for tea, and then working, and then, by the time you get in, it's late, and like now we're talking about the weather today, but that worry of getting home in the traffic, I've been there, so I want to make. So what do I want from it? I want to make their lives happier and easier, so that they can turn to me and think, well, she's done it, I can do it, and if she's, and she's educating me at the same time, and I'm doing the hard work, I'm doing all the reading, I'm doing all the digesting, I'm understanding the law for you, and I'm trying to put it over in a way that you'll never ever forget it, and I'm going to help you get to your levels and the CIPD levels that you need to get into.
That's a great mission.
Could listen to you and talk to you all day long. You are definitely one of my favourite guests, and I know you shouldn't have favourites, but you've inspired me in so many ways. I can't even begin to tell you. What's one of your main reflections, Lisa?
Well, for me, it's the human side, being willing to open up and show how those things that happen to you, you can turn it into a positive, and you really use it to drive forward. You've got so much drive, so much positivity. And then I think the third thing that comes across really strongly is there has been some great mentors, whether they were meant to be or not. And, they've helped you and pivoted you in particular directions, which has really moved it forward. So, lots to take. I could ask you so many questions. I'd, a big list. So we'll ask you after.
Yeah, that part two.
We'll have part two.
Yeah, but I would say to anybody out there, don't let age put you off either. I'm 57.
Yeah.
My time is now. My time has been my 50s. I think that for me, from 30 onwards, but actually the most powerful part of my life has been in my 50s. And textbook, it really shouldn't have been, but it has been. So don't think your journey's ended at a certain point in your life. You think, oh, I've heard people go, I don't want to do that, because I might be retired. And you're thinking, what are you going on about? You still want to live nicely. Age is nothing.
I love that,
Yeah.
especially as I was 50 this year, and that was like hard to get over. So I love that.
I guess that was my overall reflection. Is there's so many points in your journey that have led you to this moment that you are using brilliantly for the benefit of others. That's the thing. But more than that, you're just a lovely human being that has gone through so much. And that I'm not often speechless, but that's what I see in you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think we've stopped my journey actually at 30, didn't we?
Oh,
so
yeah.
we got 27 years we've got to catch up on, but you need me back.
It's an absolute no-brainer. Absolute no-brainer.
27 years to catch up on there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got an amazing feature that Amanda's so kindly offered to us, and she's willing to come in and speak to any organisation by getting in touch and following Leadership Actually. We will get you in contact with Amanda, and she will come into your organisation for free. It's an amazing offer. It's an amazing opportunity. So contact either myself or Lisa, and we'll put the details below. And then the one final question, Amanda. Who's the person that we should have in the hot seat, other than yourself, that you can help get us there?
Well, I think that somebody that's witnessed my journey. There's two ladies actually that witnessed my journey, and I've stayed in contact with them forever. They're brilliant leaders. They've been in the same roles and motivating, which are a very hard profession, is sales and telesales.
Yeah.
And that is Deborah Cabrera and Cristela Petru. So I think those two ladies would be fantastic to come on here. They're almost like a double act as well. So I'm going to, it's like the ice bucket challenge. They're coming on.
Remember that?
Yes, I love that.
Yeah,
You see, you've even, I say that question all the time, and you've simplified it again.
It's
Love
an
it.
ice bucket challenge. She'd be like, what? But I know. They people will find them inspirational. People will find them great to listen to. They've got loads of techniques, and because it's sales, everybody wants to know about sales, don't they? And especially telesales. So, yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. The gift that keeps giving. I can't believe it. So there you have it. There's a wrap. It's been an incredible session. Please like, follow, subscribe, Leadership Actually. Yeah, below. What did you take from this session? That's what we want to hear. We want to hear from you. How did it resonate? What will you move going forward? And we will see you on the next edition of Leadership Actually.
Thank you.